on the 2022 budget statement. The Speaker, Chrono Ayesh. The system is hot. To which the system may not be able to bear the hardship. Literally, the system is hot, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it's only the Honorable Ofori-Atta who ironically eases burdens, to quote his words, that they are not, there is no illusion about the suffering of Ghanaians, yet he is imposing further suffering, imposing a 1.75 Momo electronic banking tax. So it's only Ofori-Atta who eases suffering with the imposition of new taxes targeted at 15 billion Ghana cedis within this period. But Mr. Speaker, with this promise of unsustainable debt, increased suffering and hardships beyond CST communication service tax and VAT, is bringing in e-transaction levies that he will reverse the gains of financial inclusion. But Mr. Speaker, we are not in a haste to debate him. And why you project revenue from 53 billion to 80 billion within 1 year, the market have listened to you. Ghanaians have listened to you. This budget does not end any suffering. You will be credited in the Guinness Book of Records for borrowing more than any other minister under the Fourth Republic. Mr. Speaker, with that, I will not hesitate to second the motion for adjournment. I will not hesitate. I will allow the leader of government business, who himself today is not too smiling. The Vice President, the chairhead, is not here today because of acting capacity. We will advise him to go beyond coming to chair.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to our budget analysis tonight. We are delighted to report that we have in the studio the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Planning, the Honorable Ofori-Atta. He's happy to share with us, take our questions and share with us issues about the budget. Our young people will also speak about it. We will begin, though, with some analysis of what happened in Parliament about the budget today. You heard a big story about the Speaker was furious that the Minister for Roads, pursuant to the budget statement yesterday, had given a directive that all tolls should be closed. And so this morning, people went to work in Accra from Kaswa and other places without the toll. It's created a bit of furor in Parliament today. We will analyze on the touch screen whether the Speaker was right or whether the majority leader was right. As usual, we'll fall on the 1992 Constitution, the provisions in thereof that speak about Parliament's power and the imposition of taxes and the waiver of these taxes. That will take us just 5 minutes as the Minister of Finance prepares to join us. But tonight, I will not be doing the questions alone. Yes, we'll take all your questions from social media, but I want the young people to ask questions as well. This budget was presented for young people. You Start is a big matter we're going to talk about today. But I'm delighted to report that the Minister will be answering questions about the debt sustainability, the debt situation in Ghana, the issues about COVID-19. What did we spend during COVID-19? Who did we spend it on? We'll deal with all of those questions. We'll ask him also about the famous take-or-pay. We have been told that the take-or-pay contracts inherited by the Ofori-Atta Ministry of Finance has affected government's ability to raise significant amount of money. Also, we understand that the famous Ejapa will find its way back to Parliament, so we can call it Ejapa number 2. We know that the Finance Minister was passionate about this when the bill came to Parliament last year before it passed. We'll ask him questions about that as well. All of that coming up. So tell your friend to tell his friend that this is the place to be. I have to mention that in the studio is also the Information Minister, Honorable Member of Parliament for Ofori-Atta, the Honorable Kojo Ponkruma. He's given us tacit support. So he's here with us as well. Okay, so let me go to the young people and ask them. Christine, what did your friends say about the budget?
Well, there has been mixed Some people think it's good because more people will be able to pay taxes, and then there will be more income tax for the governments to use. But then other people are also very furious about the whole mobile money tax, and they think it's very unfair because they are going to have to pay a lot just to use mobile money, and so they are very furious about that.
Okay, Kuku, what are your friends saying?
Well, a lot of my friends are confused about the establishment of the development bank. A lot of them say that there are many banks, and indeed some banks were even closed. So the whole idea of a development bank, will it engage in retail banking? What will it be for? What is its importance? So a lot of people are quite confused about what the development bank is and what it means for Ghana's economy going forward.
Great, I've written that question down, development bank. Mikael, what are people saying?
For one, I've learned a lot of important lessons from this. Many of the reactions that I've been seeing from my friends are of anger. They're a bit unhappy, dissatisfied with the things that are going. But what I've learned is at times you have to learn to get the information, because sometimes you try to engage these people in in-depth discussions and you find that they don't really get the details of it. So I've seen that sometimes when you have a bit of dissatisfaction, it's best to just calm down and actually find out what's being said in the information before you express your anger and dissatisfaction.
Okay. Matilda, what are your friends saying?
My friends are really, in fact, before I came to the show today, some of my friends were talking about the tax that we have to pay on e-transactions. And they were saying, so now if they have to send money, the person sending them money is going to pay tax, and then they also have to pay tax when they are sending it. And they feel it is very unfair to them.
Is that what it is? The receiving person pays tax as well?
That's what they think. So today I'm
the
just
finance
looking
minister
forward
will clarify
to
that.
getting, clarity on that today as well.
Okay. All right, great. So that's all interesting. Ready for the action. Now, the finance minister ended his presentation with a sermonic sort of presentation to Parliament. We'll get that. We'll get that, and then we'll ask him questions about it. Let's go to the touchscreen though now, and let's see what we get. Matilda, you have to leave me here. Okay, so we're going to quickly talk about this. This is what happened in Parliament today, and we're anticipating a press statement also from the government. If that's ready, we'll get it for you, but we're anticipating the press statement. So this is Ken Ofori-Atta, the Honorable Minister of Finance, who delivered the budget statement yesterday. The high point of the budget statement was about the abolition of toll booth tax, if you like. He made that announcement in the budget. You know that the budget is a bill, if you like, it's an appropriation bill. So the finance minister presents the bill to Parliament. Parliament will debate it, they will pass it. If they pass all the aspects of it, then it becomes an act with which the Ministry of Finance can spend and can also raise taxes. So he conducted his duty in a sterling way yesterday in Parliament, as he usually does, and he ended his story. And then came the Minister for Roads, the Honorable Ofori-Atta, Member of Parliament for Etiwa. Now, he's the Minister of Roads. He issued a statement yesterday, soon after the budget was presented. And Mr. Ofori-Atta said that with immediate effect, all the people at the road toll collecting the tolls should stop their work. They will be reassigned. Road tolls are not going to be part of Ghana's conversation, at least not in the immediate future, pursuant to the budget that was read yesterday. So what happened this morning? This morning, people went to this is the Kaswa one, I think, is it Tamamoto, one of them. People went to the toll area and it was empty. You didn't have anybody in there. And so they drove quickly and went to work, and people were quite excited about that. Because they could go to work very quickly. So we heard that those who drove were very happy. But those who plied their trade, if I can call it that, around the toll booth area, you know, when you arrive there, the Bow Fruits comes, the Achomo comes, Inketie and yogurts, they all come to you at the toll booth. They are very unhappy. They are wondering why Ken Ofori-Atta has taken their daily bread from them. Because when people gather at the road toll, they are late going to work, they are listening to radio. That's when they buy their bowl fruits, the farm milk, achomo, inketie, Coca-Cola, whatever, you know. So both morning and evening. So they have some little economy there, morning and evening. They are not happy. The majority of drivers are very excited. But this infuriated Alban Sumano Kingsford Bagbin, the Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament. And when he took the chair today, he was very upset. His concern is that how does the road minister begin the implementation of a proposal in a budget which has not been passed by Parliament? That was his firm argument. He didn't understand why the Honourable Ofori-Atta would do that. So he actually called for a reversal. Can you imagine that? The Speaker said that should be reversed. Tomorrow morning they should go back and collect the money. Speaker is the legislative arm of our government, there's executive arm of government, there's a judicial arm of government. Okay, so we have been discussing this matter. Who is right and who is wrong? Chairman Sabonsu presented a very scholarly analysis of the matter. Now, his concern was that Mr. Speaker is not a member of parliament. He certainly is not. He's the umpire of parliament. He's not a member of parliament. He's not been elected by the people of Ghana. He is not a member of parliament. He's the umpire. So Chairman Sabonsu's concern was that the Speaker is only able to carry the decisions of parliament to the other arms of government. He can carry a decision of parliament to the judiciary. He can carry a decision of parliament to the executive and to the general public. But he cannot carry his own personal directives in his capacity as Speaker. He cannot do that. He's not part of the government. The parliament is part of the government, the legislative arm. When they pass a resolution or they pass anything by a majority, the Speaker can carry that out. Chairman Sabonsu was concerned that the Speaker is grabbing territorial authority that he doesn't have, that he cannot as a Speaker do that. Okay, so we had the argument, people applauded Chairman Sabonsu, but let's go into the law and try and understand this. And when we finish, I'll play you a tape by J.H. Mensah in the question of Parliament's authority and all that. Okay, so here is the law. Article 174 of the 1992 Constitution is in chapter 30. It is entitled Finance. It says as follows: no taxation shall be imposed otherwise done by or under the authority of an act of parliament. So that is clear. You cannot impose a tax without the authority of parliament. The toll booth is a tax. So the toll booth must have been imposed on Ghanaians with the authority of parliament as an act of parliament. That's the only way you can impose taxes under Article 174 of the 1992 Constitution. 174.1. It doesn't end there, by the way. Let's move on. 174.2 says, where an act enacted in accordance with clause 1 of this article confers power on any person or authority to waive or vary a tax imposed by that act, the exercise of the power of the waiver or variation in favor of any person or authority shall be subject to the prior approval of Parliament. So we put our own small interpretation to this matter and our analogy to it. We are not the Supreme Court, which has the power to interpret the laws and interpret the acts of Parliament in Ghana. We certainly are not. But we can hazard our own interpretation into this. So let's get back into 2 again. We know that 1 says that imposition of taxes. 2 says, where an act enacted in accordance with clause 1 of this article confers power or any person or authority to waive. So where a law has been passed, say some free zones tax or taxes on importation of cars or something like that, and then in the act it says that the power to waive these taxes for an individual, maybe a company, a person or authority or company, or you want to waive it for the military, the police, all of that, where a tax is certified by an act of parliament. But in the Tax Act, it says that the Minister of Finance is able to do a waiver, or the Minister of Trade is able to do a waiver, or the Minister for Interior is able to do a waiver for the police. Where that is in the tax, that person cannot exercise that variation except with the authority of Parliament. So where's the question here? Question here is the tax that was imposed by Ghanaians at the toll booth, right? Did it contain in its act a waiver by a minister of sorts for any person or authority? We checked, the answer is no. Okay. The waiver that has now been occasioned by the Minister of Roads directive, is it in favor of any person or any authority? Again, the answer is no. Therefore, the removal of road tolls, question is, should you go to Parliament before you remove it? You should certainly go to Parliament before you impose any tax. Question here is, given what clause 2 is telling us, which is the other side of the tax. Clause 1 is imposing, clause 2 is variation. And this can pass for a variation. That variation, clause 2 says, where it is being done for a person or an authority, and where the variation itself has been conceptualized in the act, and the authority to vary is given to a minister. That minister, when he wants to exercise that variation given in the act, he needs to come back to Parliament. So the jury is out on that. The question is over there. Tell us what you think. Our humble view is that for Mr. Ofori-Atta, the Minister of Roads, to sort of remove the taxes and all of that, remove the road tolls, he really didn't need to come back to Parliament. It doesn't appear so, but Parliament can decide it. All of us can think what we think. Tell me what you think. You can send a text message. But this then reminds us of the situation of Parliament's authority and the executive authority, and we couldn't help it, but we had to go into our archives and pull out something J.H. Mensah said about the authority of Parliament. This is way back in 1997. Here's J.H. Mensah emphasizing, as far as he's concerned, the authority of Parliament. Hear him.
And I'm making this point quite seriously because it is our wish on this side of the House that the authority and dignity of Parliament should be affirmed and reaffirmed on every possible occasion as one of the bulwarks of our freedom. And I'm making this point quite seriously because it is our wish on this side of the House that the authority and dignity of Parliament should be affirmed and reaffirmed on every possible occasion as one of the bulwarks of our freedom. And I'm making this point quite seriously because it is our wish on this side of the House that the authority and dignity of Parliament should be affirmed and reaffirmed on every possible occasion as one of the bulwarks of our freedom. And I'm making this point quite seriously because it is our wish on this side of the House that the authority and dignity of Parliament should be affirmed and reaffirmed on every possible occasion.
Okay, so that's our preliminary conversation. The Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta will join us in a minute, and then we will begin the discussion. But let's go back to Parliament yesterday. After Ken Ofori-Atta had finished his presentation, here's Haruna Idrisu speaking in Parliament. He spoke in Twi at some point, and he said, Kronuma Eshi. Have a look.
Mr. Speaker, we have heard the Honorable Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, on the 2022 budget statement. Mr. Speaker, Kronuma Eshi. The system is hot. To which the system may not be able to bear the hardship. Literally, the system is hot, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it's only the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta who ironically eases burdens, to quote his words, that they are not, there is no illusion about the suffering of Ghanaians, yet he is imposing further suffering, imposing a 1.75 Momo electronic banking tax. So it's only Ken Ofori-Atta who eases suffering with the imposition of new taxes targeted at 15 billion Ghana cedis within this period. But Mr. Speaker, with this promise of unsustainable debt, increased suffering and hardships beyond CST, communication service tax and VAT, is bringing in e-transaction levies that he will reverse the gains of financial inclusion. But Mr. Speaker, we are not in a haste to debate him. And when you project revenue from 53 billion to 80 billion within 1 year, the market have listened to you. Ghanaians have listened to you. This budget does not end any suffering. You will be credited in the Guinness Book of Records for borrowing more than any other minister under the Fourth Republic. Mr. Speaker, with that, I will not hesitate to second the motion for adjournment. I will not hesitate. I will allow the leader of government business, who himself today is not too smiling, the Vice President.
Okay, good evening, Honorable Minister.
Good evening. Good to be here.
You've had a tough day, I think. A tough 2 days today.
It's been long.
Very, very long. Wow. Okay, the Attorney General did something today. We'll show it to you briefly. He announced that Cabinet has passed 2 important laws that will help our justice delivery system. Have a look at this.
Lack of funding, poor infrastructure, lack of space and tools for skills development for prisoners remains a challenge in most places of detentions in Ghana. It is on the back of these challenges that the Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Dame, who doubles as the Minister of Justice, paid a working visit to the James Camp prisons and the Senior Correctional Center in Accra.
Today, Upon familiarizing ourselves with the conditions in which prisoners live, we hope that in accordance with our mandate under the Constitution, not only to act as a principal legal advisor, but also to draft legislation for the country.
Eric Edri is the Director General of the James Camp Prisons. He prayed the minister to facilitate establishment of a central electronic case management system with a specific function to aid criminal justice.
The prison service is at this juncture advocating for the establishment of a central electronic case management system with defined operational procedures common to all criminal justice institutions to help streamline processes which will guide criminal justice agencies and establish responsibilities and guidelines for efficient service delivery.
Outlining some attempts to reduce the overcrowding in most places of detention by his outfit, the minister said he is working expeditiously for a bill that will find alternative punishment for offenders who are sentenced to serve a jail term.
I am happy to state that Cabinet, about 3 weeks ago, granted approval to my request for the policy and the bill for the amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act to incorporate plea bargaining to be laid before Parliament. Pursuant to the directives of Cabinet, I have consulted the Honourable Minister for the Interior on the exceptions to plea bargaining. I propose that offences in the nature of treason, offences like rape, genocide, robbery, kidnapping, murder, attempted murder, abduction, defilement, piracy, and offences related to public elections will be excluded from plea bargaining.
As part of his support for the inmates, some toiletries and provisions were donated to the detention home by the Minister of Justice and his entourage.
Okay, also, if you're looking for Medina MP, the Honorable Sosu, and you heard that the police can't find him, we found him. He gave us an interview. Here's a 29-second promo of that interview, which will be shown tomorrow on Good Afternoon Ghana with Francisca Kakrafos. And here is Sosu. He's here. He's not gone anywhere.
I'm willing to go all the way to International Human Rights Court. The reason being that I will be setting a very wrong precedent to say that, oh, you see, that's a typical Ghanaian attitude. If Ghana want to imprison me because I let people on legitimate demonstration for road fixed, I will willingly go to that prison. How would you show up in a protest and hook a member of parliament as a common criminal?
That's what they did to you.
Of course.
That interview will be on Good Afternoon Ghana tomorrow, and you can see it. Good evening, Honorable Minister, again.
Good evening. It's good to be here.
Yes. Maybe let me start with why are you always in white?
Oh my God, this is an old age question, and I think I refer people to Ecclesiastes 9, which really is to give praise to God for being where we are and to be thankful. And he says, wear white, anoint your hair, and love your wife.
Say that again, white and anoint your hair and love your wife.
There you go.
Ecclesiastes what?
9.
Please, Ecclesiastes 9. Find it. People also talk about the fact that you are unwell, you are unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday you stood up for 5 hours.
2 hours. About 2 hours.
But you were in Parliament early and you were there throughout, and after you were still there. What's the state of Ken Ofori-Atta's health?
You know, I got COVID somewhere in November, and then got out of the hospital, emergency, maybe the 10th of December. You know, came home, and things were pretty good. I mean, the COVID was gone. Then you began to feel jaundiced, and so feeling quite unwell. Eventually got diagnosis that the liver was inflamed, and therefore it required, you know, some work to determine what was really happening. So that took some time to begin to find the probable cure, which involved, you know, steroids and all of that. So went back for review in August, and the inflammation is pretty much gone. And so they are now titrating to see how to bring the steroid down so that one can get back to a normal life. But essentially, pretty much mended, and you need to just manage your rest and sleep and exercises and some good food. Yeah.
We
So
thank God for that.
It's good. And,
I like the last one, some good food.
Yeah, healthy food.
Does it include wache?
I think I have to be careful of oils there.
Okay.
But it's good. I mean, I think it was quite clear, the issue of prayers and intervention and all of that. So we are really grateful to God and a lot of people who held us in prayers. Yeah. But clearly, you know, the DNA is strong enough to be able to do the work that we do.
Absolutely.
And I'm very excited about that.
Okay, that's good. When the president presented the sessional address to Parliament, the first comment from the minority was that he didn't talk about the national debt, and they were concerned about that.
Right.
And yesterday they were making calls in Parliament about the national debt.
Right.
They said that when you were in opposition, you and Dr. Bawumia said that government was going to move from taxation to production.
When we're in opposition?
When you're in opposition, yes.
I'm not sure
you win.
I'm not sure I ever made any.
No, they say Ken and Bawumia. That's how they say it these days.
Were you able to find any records of Ken talking about policy?
Him, of Dr. Bawumia, talking about taxation, production more than taxation.
Right.
They say that under your watch as Minister of Finance,
right,
the government of Ghana has borrowed more than it should, or more than comparably to other earlier governments. You borrowed so much, and that Ghana is now in a high debt situation.
Right.
World Bank is calling us HIPIC again, and people wanted me to ask you that, what is the state of the debt? Why have we borrowed so much? What have we used the borrowed money for, and why are we in so much debt? What's the recovery plan?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and obviously there's there's absolute transparency in the levels that we are talking about. I think we inherited something like 123 billion or so.
123 billion debt.
Yeah.
We owed 123 billion.
Yeah, when we started.
Domestically or together?
Combined.
Combined.
Okay. And we had moved, I guess, from 9 billion in 2009 to 123 billion. So quite a dramatic sort of rate of growth. So we inherited about some 6 billion of undisbursed facilities. So that's 6 that we inherited. And then we came and met, as you know, the financial situation in which our banks were going to be bankrupt, and I think we spent close to 22 billion in that. So 6 plus 22, I guess you get to 28. Then we had inheritance of these IPP projects that, you know, were quite a bit of a killer. And that was about 13 billion. You know.
The IPP, the take or pay, was 13 billion.
Yeah, and what we had to pay on all of that. Now, when you also look at, so that's about 40 billion right there. Then you look at, you know, the natural progression of conversion in terms of foreign exchange, and that clips another 48 billion to that in terms of foreign exchange conversion as the currency depreciates.
So we suffered currency depreciation that occasioned a debt
of about 48 billion in terms of CD valuation. So
no, I don't understand that. So when this dollar goes up, we owe, or we have to change more CDs to buy the things that we
exactly. So if you discount that also from that, so we're talking 40 plus another 48 or so. So then what are we talking about? So we're talking about 130 billion of what we have then, you know, borrowed for liability management and all the work that we have done over that period. And so the judgment really, in a sense, is what have you done with the 130 billion?
So how much have you borrowed as as a government? We told us what you inherited, and you told us the CD situation.
Right.
But in terms of actual borrowing,
right.
how much have you borrowed?
So if you look at what we've gone for the euro money, well, so essentially what I'm saying is that the 130 billion is really, so the amount that we have had occasion to borrow.
So we borrowed 130 million
130 billion.
since 2017.
Yeah. Okay.
130 billion
yeah.
of CDs.
Of CDs, okay.
So
we inherited 123. I've explained the 80 to 90 odd, and then the balance is what we are talking about. And I think if you look at the plethora of things that we have done, which I try to list.
I'll come to that. So how much do we owe? We owe 130 plus the 123?
Yeah, so we owe, as I mentioned right from the beginning, 337 billion, right?
337 billion.
123.
What's the ratio of that to GDP?
Right now, it's about 77.8.
77.8% of GDP. Does that make us a hippie country?
I don't know. I mean, the issue is whether you can service your facilities or not. I mean, our ECOWAS target is 65%, and we ourselves had a target of always being below 70% one way or the other. So we have to work it out. But the question really you ask post-COVID, not even adding the COVID expenses, if I were to take that out because that was an extraordinary intervention, becomes a worldwide phenomenon. I think Africa has moved from 62% debt to GDP to 73% debt to GDP. And the G20 countries, of course, are sometimes over 100%, but because they have a reserve currency, it's a different way of managing it. So, yeah, it's an issue of managing our way out of it. And that is what we intend to do in terms of revenue raising, etc. Okay. But I think I mean, if you are a Keynesian follower, you ask for what type of intervention is required to break that visual cycle.
But as of now, in terms of the analysis, would we be called a hippie country with 77.8% of GDP?
I'm not sure. I mean, because it's whether you can service your debt or not.
Is that what the HIPIC analysis is about? It's not just the fraction you owe, but whether you can service.
It's distress, etc., etc. But if you feel capable in regards to revenue generation to be able to do that, then you go. And that's why some countries go beyond 100%, because either they have a reserve currency or they feel that they can rack up productivity at some point to get out of that situation.
Which one is our option? Racking up productivity and being able to raise taxes?
I think productivity and making sure you have the revenue. And the capacity, I mean, Paul, is there for us to do that. Because when you are currently at 12 to 14% of revenue to GDP, I mean, clearly with the programs of digitalization, with the new ID cards becoming tin numbers, there's a step-up progress that can happen for us to do that. Africa currently, maybe it's in the 13, 14% stage. It's about $500 billion that we have in terms of revenues. And so doubling that gives you, $1 trillion or so. And so in Ghana, as we look at, our 70 million that GRA comes, imagine moving that to 24 or 36, and we have the resources to do that. So the challenge this budget really is the issue of extending the reach for us to be able to collect our due taxes and then work our way out of this. But the capacity is there to do that.
Ghanaians would not like to hear the tax objectives of the finance minister. You seem to be saying that, yeah, we can get out of this because our tax collection is so low at 12% of GDP, and that means there's a wide room for us to go and collect taxes, as it were. Is that the solution to reducing our debt burden? Is it an increase of taxation or bringing more people into the tax net? What is it?
Well, that is what we are trying to do. I mean, if you look at the current profile, you see what about 88% comes from Greater Accra, and Ashanti, Western, and Eastern together is about 3%. then we all...
Of revenue from tax?
Of revenue from tax.
88% from Greater Accra region?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that. So you begin to look at the imbalance of it. Then all of us keep talking about the issue of the informal market. And the informal market, interestingly, yes, it is the mason or the macular person, etc. But an embarrassing amount is actually the middle class in terms of professionals, 6,000 doctors, lawyers, etc., who, through this national ID, so about 60,000 of them or us in that class that pay little to nothing. And so suddenly you are going to be able to capture all of that, in which, you know, I can look at your data and say that you bought a car, you bought 3 tickets to go abroad. This is the type, so that I can actually help you with your taxes and come to you to pay.
I like the word you use, help.
Yeah. And also the issue of property taxes, and that has long sort of bedeviled us in a sense. You know, so the challenge, as if you look at the theme of the budget, which says that let's build an a sustainable entrepreneurial nation by, you know, making sure that we are consolidating and that we are creating jobs, is to bring us to this new Vesta, which says that we are going to be masters of our destiny. We are all going to contribute to this new reality of where we want to go. We are going to exercise this joblessness thing, which is really an affront to the dignity of everyone. And I'm saying that the visible hand of the state should be part of the solution, but everybody should be burden sharing to get us out of this, because we are a bigger society than we are, and we can, and nobody likes taxes, Paul. I mean, that's global. So will there be a furore about that? Sure. But do we know where we want to go to be that country that has a manifest destiny for greatness? I think we can, and we need to just, you know, be able to talk to create jobs. You know, why should my child be at home after the state has helped with insurance, has helped with schooling, has helped with school feeding, has given education, and then the end result is I'm now having to be able to cater for this. And we are saying, look, this is the biggest intervention, Paul, that I have seen in the nation in my 60 years, in terms of saying that government has decided through this tax to get 1 billion cedis each year into a Youth Start program, get our partners to give us 2 billion over the 3 years. That's 5 billion. Work with the banks to come up with a deal which gives us an additional 5 billion to have a 10 billion deal to then focus on making sure that the youth has training. The enablers are there, you know, access to finance, training, ICT, and starter packs for that. And then the private sector can also be extended, because I can also help subsidize certain loans, give first loss to bankers, so that I can risk mitigate for them, and they can also be more aggressive about that. So it's a whole different issue in terms of tackling, and we saying that where we are at the crossroads, we all should be part of the solution.
I like the Youth Start idea. I like us to spend a bit more time on it. But just before then, the opposition complained that your government said one constituency $1 million. They allege that has not happened.
Yeah.
So when you are telling us that you have 10 billion, you're going to set aside 10 billion, and you have a brilliant way of calculating how you get it, 10 billion, and that 10 billion is going to go to youth.
Youth and private sector.
Youth and private sector.
Yeah.
The concern is, would it become like 1 million, one constituency?
Well, I mean, you can't, you know, have fear cripple you or history be sort of the judge of not going forward. I think what they are talking about is the IPEP programs, and there are about close to 5,000 projects that are at some stage of development or not. I think this particular budget, and it's expected that it will cost about 4 billion and change. And this particular budget, we have it programmed to all of those things to be done in the next 2 years.
So let's now deal with the Youth Start step by step. So there are various categories of it, and it's all for private sector entrepreneurs. And you say it's for young people. Is there an age limit or something like that in the criteria?
I mean, typically you talk about sort of the 18 to 35 as, you know, the key areas. And then there's also the banking agreement or compact that we have, which looks at private sector and all business people. But the thing is, how do you inoculate this triangle of people coming from primary school dropping out, GHS dropping out, senior high school dropping out, tertiary people coming out? And this is where the agreement with NEIP and GEA, former MBSSI, is going to work to create training programs and access to capital. I think we put some band of some of amounts that will be approved for that. And then below the 10,000 is also sort of the district level type situation.
Okay, so the thresholds are there's 50,000 CDs.
Yes, 50,000.
Okay, so that 50,000 goes to some of these. So some of these young people in the studio, like Matilda, you have a business, don't you? What do you do?
I make beaded bracelets and I retail African print bags, African print bags.
Yeah.
And I'm also part of another startup company called Econexis Ventures,
Yeah.
where we make gel for cooking, ethanol-based flours.
Right.
Yes. So.
Yeah. But I think that's the exciting part of it. I mean,
so for somebody like that,
yeah.
What category can they access? What will they?
So they will fall certainly into the GEA and NEIP, scheme that we are talking about. And the thing is to really to advertise it such that any young person has no excuse. That this is a national program that everybody is aware of, and if you are home, your parents can ask you, have you gone to it? So that the advertisement and it being a national narrative is really what we are looking at. Sure, there's been disappointments in the past, but we need to move forward. And this is the largest such intervention that I've seen in our country.
How will they be supposed to pay back? Are they going to get a moratorium?
There'll be all sorts of structures, part of it grant, part of it subsidized loans. Get you to become a business person, and the whole idea of being carried by the state, one's lifetime. Let's take some risk. I know I'm going to lose some money as a government, but really triggering the youth to be able to take these risks is important. I started my company in 1990, and I borrowed $25,000. That's Data Bank in Cantamanto. So when people think that
you were very high-skilled labor.
Well, whether it's high-skilled or not, you don't start an investment bank in Cantamanto, do you? And that is the humility of understanding where you want to go and the problems of entrepreneurship. You fail, you pick up, you go. So as we sit at Ministry of Finance, there's a clear empathy and understanding of what it takes to be able to build a business. And it's not short term. It took 20-something years for Data Bank to be where it is, or enterprise insurance, etc. And this is what we are trying to craft, saying that, look, guys, let's take some risk. I've gone around the country enough. I've experienced it myself to know the issue of finance, access to it, and the cost of it, the specific training. And therefore, when somebody comes to me with a transaction for $100,000 or $200,000, I'll genuinely ask you, have you ever managed $10,000 before? And what is it that you are in a hurry for if you truly want to understand your business and move it forward? So I think after all of that experience is saying that this is the type of intervention that we want, and we have to trust it, we put the resources behind it, and let's talk to create jobs, okay? So anytime you talk, you contribute and to being part of the inclusive part of bringing the revenue into place and helping, our children also move into taking the risk because the state is aware of the hazards of doing business, but at the same time also ensuring that those who have businesses already have access to capital that makes sense for them to expand. So the whole issue of cynicism, we got to try it. The only thing about it is fear of the future. and you need to take that risk. I mean, you don't leave Wall Street to come and hide in Cantamanto to create an investment bank, and then 28 years later, this is where you are. So I'm truly excited about this budget because it creates a certain inclusiveness of everybody contributing, the risk of our youth not attaining their God-given talents and what they can do for the nation is upon us. And we need to cross this parapet. And that's why we are doing this.
Is that not sending all our people into private sector where you require a lot of talent and all that? So assuming a young man wants to teach at the university, he's finished university. I have somebody like that here, Al-Hassan Bello. He's finished the university. He wants to be a lecturer. He doesn't like the amount of money lecturers are paid, but that's what he wants to do. He wants to work in the public sector. He wants to be employed by the University of Ghana. For such people who want to work in the government sector, nothing for them?
What do you mean by there's nothing for them?
Because they cannot access 10,000.
Well, so that the issue, well, they have different things that they need, is that correct?
Yes, but
and therefore they don't want to be an entrepreneur, you know, but we extend the tax base by what we are doing, and therefore we have more resources for the public sector to be able to, you know, hire more people. Because, I mean, truly, if we are talking about efficiency and then where people are placed, the public sector also needs more help.
Yes.
Okay?
Somebody wants to finish legal and wants to work at the Ministry of Finance. He doesn't want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, but why are we thinking that you don't have the option to do what you want to do because I'm promoting entrepreneurship?
Because the finance minister's budget is heavy on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
95%.
But once I get the resources I have, I can improve the public sector.
So you have in mind improving the public sector
the public
to expand?
sector has to improve.
Because recently you made a statement that the public sector is closed. And the opposition were upset about it.
Yeah, but why should you be upset? Why should you be upset when I'm spending 60-odd% of my resources for 650,000 people?
For how many thousand people?
650,000.
Public sector is 650,000.
Yeah. Well, why should you be upset about
and you are
that?
Spending
and what is wrong of extending? You know, I mean, when you look at the statistics now from the census, and you have, what, 58% of our people below the age of 18, I guess, you know, and then between the 18 and 35 bracket, you know, maybe about a third of our population. We have to inoculate that. We have to do something differently than what we are doing. You know, we spent, I think, the first 4 or 5 years in ensuring a build-up of social mobility as a human capital, etc., making sure school feeding goes on, you know, in numbers that have not been seen before for a center-right party, because we believe in the capital of people to be able to transform the country. But you need to expand people's horizon beyond thinking that I just have to be in the military or in the police or in the public services. And it is something that we haven't done. So this intervention is bold, it's clear, that's where most people are. And the informal sector is huge. And so what is wrong with giving a really huge hand to the youth and the informal sector for them to be even more productive? Once they are more productive, there are more taxes to support the public sector.
So this kind of productivity is for them to create something and bring onto the market. Is our market strong enough to buy?
Well, what do we have now, Paul? I mean, you have me sitting in Aquadum or something, and with the correct tuition, I can get into YouTube, learn something, find a way to connect to the international market, and do something different. We have, I mean, we brought what? Political independence to Africa. Fortunately, 60 years later, AFCFTA Secretariat, which is really the new wave of emancipation, economic trade investment is here. How do we capitalize on it and create a regional platform from here to be able to then extend the market beyond the 30 million people? And I think, I mean, if you go through looking at the youth, you can see the connection that they are having with the international market, even by sitting here. And that is what we need to extend in terms of our curricula and what NEIP and GEA will help with those connections so that the markets are extended.
So if you look forward, Honorable Finance Minister, if you look forward to the years ahead, assuming that you were 80% successful with these beautiful plans, when do you think Ghana will really turn the corner?
Well, 80% of the successful plans, you would have turned the corner.
How many years do you envision that if
Well,
all
we
of
have,
these plans
well,
that you have in place work,
yeah.
when can we be telling a different story from our debt to GDP ratio, our unemployment situation, lack of access to capital? When can we tell a different story? About how many years?
Well, certainly the Ghana Cares Over Tampa program, you know, is a 3.5-year program ending in 2024, in a sense, as the first phase. And we should have clear matrices that indicate that turnaround. You know, if I can create an investment banking of that nature from starting in Kantamanto, there are much smarter people than me who can do a lot more than that. And what do you need? I mean, you want one Microsoft, one Apple, one Amazon, and it's a different ball game. So how do you offer that space for the youth to be able to ply their trade or experiment with what they want to do, excited in a country that's a destination, that is a regional hub, that builds confidence in people, that they can be world class. And we know we can. You know, so how do you trigger that? And I think this budget from the president of becoming an entrepreneurial state is what is going to lead us to that.
We will achieve that in what, 5 years, you think? Being an entrepreneurial state?
I'm hoping that, you know, by the time President Akufo-Addo's term ends, it will be a clear, different sense of who we are as a dynamic entrepreneurial society.
Okay, so 2025, January 2025. Okay, people want to understand this energy take or pay that you inherited. Can you give us a clear analysis of it? So the contract is done between the government of Ghana and an energy service provider or power provider. They call them independent power producers. And that person is supposed to produce energy for the consumption of Ghana or export. He has his charges. So those charges are paid to him irrespective of anything. Is that, how does it work?
I'm sure you need the technical people to get you to the bottom of all of that, except that clearly we signed contracts which says that you take or you pay. And so I have signed a contract to give me a certain amount of power, and whether I take it or not, you know, I guarantee that I will. And that just sweeps through all of the contracts that we had. So the negotiations are going on, you know, in a way in which I'm trying to push towards take and pay. It's only when I take that power that I pay. And that is going to save us, you know, over $6 billion if we are successful in that.
So we're successful in redoing the contracts?
In redoing those contracts.
Okay.
And so that's, we've been pursuing that, and I suspect that by year end, would have restructured about 3 to 4 of those, which will be considerable for us.
I see. Okay, that's interesting. Just before I come to COVID, let's talk quickly about the banking, what we now call the banking crisis. The Bank of Ghana pulled down licenses of certain banks and consolidated it in the Ghana Consolidated Bank. What's the state of affairs in that part of our economy, banking?
I mean, Paul, I guess, you know, for me, for us to pretend that we don't have a much more robust and profitable banking system, we'll be lying to ourselves. These were banks that we came to meet where the quality review analysis was very clear that we're going to go under. Now, who was going to make the hard decision to do that? And the governor made that decision, and we are paying for it. And I'm quite satisfied with the results with regards to where interest rates are, with regards to their lending capacity, with regards to the confidence that the banking system now has to be able to support even this, our Youth Start program and the new venture that we have. The other issue, Paul, is the issue of long-term money at affordable rates. And this is where we programmed what we call the Development Bank of Ghana. So Development Bank of Ghana essentially is going to be a new institution and we call it a wholesale bank. Okay, so we're going to build it up to have its own balance.
What does wholesale bank mean?
Wholesale meaning that it's not going to lend directly to people.
So I cannot walk there and take a loan?
You cannot walk there and take a loan.
Oh, I see.
So what it is that it's now a channel in which we'll be able to attract foreign financing through them at good rates, almost like an AFDB or an Asian, investment and infrastructure bank, to bring that resource into the country to be able to feed our private equity, our venture capital, our banks, our leasing companies, so that they can also then unlend or do the business they do to other people. So it's not retail, but it brings a credible other pillar of resources beyond the central bank or government, and therefore will be able to push our infrastructure and also support these institutions and to be able to lend or apply their trade more effectively.
So who will they be lending to if individuals cannot go there? What does that mean?
To the financial institutions.
So they'll be lending to banks?
Yes. Banks will be lending to venture capital companies, they will be lending to leasing companies, etc., so that they can also find the resources they need to be able to.
How will that change the borrowing quagmire of people who say the rate is too high? Is the rate from money from development bank to a commercial bank
likely
will be cheaper?
Will be cheaper. Yeah.
Is that going to be legislated?
No,
in terms of the rates?
You can legislate that. I think we still need a free market, depending on how they borrow, the strength of their balance sheet, and then that will be channeled through to our institutions. So it brings another entry into the way in which the banks will be financed.
How are you able to find money? We don't have money. We know that. We've been told that. How then does Ofori-Atta find money to create another bank? Where is that money coming
even
from?
with this one, we had a target of $1 billion, and already we had $800 million.
You had a target of raising the foundational capital of $1 billion. Where did you find it? Is it part of our tax money? Is it?
No. Well, we there's a combination. We got some money from Africa Development Bank. We got some money from KFW. We got some money from EIB. We got some money from the World Bank. And after that, we are now then going to go to the market to also be able to raise some money. So you need to get creative about sources of funding that are in the world. I'm sure we'll find a way to look at these whole climate change thing, to be able to work with the Green Fund to bring resources. And that really is expansiveness and your understanding of what, for example now, if the oil companies have net zero targets, they need to find ways in which they can get to net zero.
What is net zero?
In terms of emissions.
The carbon emissions.
The carbon emissions.
Okay. So our energy companies must get to zero.
They have to get to zero.
Okay.
Where do they find it from? It is possible that, within Ghana, with our forests, and it's about 58 or 60 million tons of CO2 emission, we can find a way to sell some of that off and bring money into the system. So that's just getting creative, and that's what, in terms of extending the architecture of our financial landscape means, so that we can have the resources to build forward in a more effective way.
Does this creativity, laudable as it is, does it create more debt for us?
What is debt? Debt has to be used properly for it to mean anything. And that's what we intend to do. We do publish all of our figures, consistently, but there are points of intervention that are needed. There are institutions that other people have that we don't have, your commodities exchange, etc., which all lead to an ability to go to the capital markets to raise the resources that you need.
Somebody sends a question that's, please ask the minister, what will be the relationship between the Bank of Ghana and the Development Bank?
It is licensed by the Bank of Ghana.
So it's going to be under the regulatory authority of the Bank of Ghana, like any other bank?
That's correct.
And who is going to determine the leadership at the bank?
Who's going to determine the leadership?
Is the government appointed like that? Some of the Ghana Commission?
No, we said actually we already have a CEO set up. We had Price Waterhouse set up a team for recruiting, and I think they've done a great job in doing that.
The person is a banker. He says he's asking because the source of the funding of this bank is bigger than the MPC is bigger than the MPC. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean.
That the money the bank has, I guess it's talking about the minimum capitalization. Is it?
Yeah, well, minimum capitalization does not mean a maximum.
Doesn't mean maximum. Okay, I get it. Okay, let's talk about COVID now. And some of your deputy ministers and others have talked about how much money was spent on COVID. I mean, I know from my own experience and from what I saw that this is the first time in the history of our country where people were asked to stay home and be paid. So yes, that must have occasioned some expenditure without productivity. So you shut down productivity, but you had to pay the people. What else happened at COVID that occasioned a lot of spending and potential increase on our debt?
I don't know. I mean, Paul, COVID has been extraordinary. There's nothing like that has happened since the Second World War globally, in which maybe 18 to 20 trillion of money was used by the G20 countries to protect lives and livelihoods and stimulate the economy. So did we do the same? I think we were very bold about what we wanted to do. The question is when you do a lockdown and you have a huge informal market, that is an inability to be able to ply your trade any day. So what do you do as a country, that really appreciates what the worth of people are? And that's what led to the food distribution, free electricity, free water. And it's really easy in hindsight to say, oh, well, what did you spend the money from? But there are really dire circumstances that we're talking about. And the issue even of getting our kids to school so that we did not miss that 1 year. Just imagine the cost that came of it. And people also really look forward to their kids going to boarding school so that they have time to do their work. So yes, we spent considerable amounts of money, including not forgetting to do what we call the cap bus, which was like another 600 million to be able to give loans, etc., for people to restart their trade again. So I think a full analysis of that, is being done to show Ghanaians what we did with that resource. But really looking at sort of what we did in our country versus what other African countries did, I think we should be proud of it. Certainly we should give a full account of the use of those proceeds. But I think sometimes the cynicism in my mind is too much. It's easy to be alive now and to think that, well, did you have to do that? But whose life should be at stake? And I think it's very laudable what the president did with fellow Ghanaians in that period to keep us, motivated, excited, knowing that we were being taken care of during that period. But I think we've gone through the worst of that, and this is where the new beginning, the New Deal of now moving into an entrepreneurial nation and finding ways to support this new era comes into being. So this is, for me, a very seminal budget in which we are asking ourselves, what are we going to do for our youth, and try to inoculate it with this policy. How do we ascend the private sector so that they can also hire more people? And in that vein, I think we have some productivity seminars that we are going to do with the unions and employers to look at ourselves as to what we do at work to increase productivity. So I don't know. I mean, I think COVID for most African finance ministers during this time was also understanding that, health is not a consumption issue, but an investment issue. And it changes your mindset as to how to finance it. They are not just pests, coming at you, but truly, how do you build for the future to make sure that the health of your people, can be protected?
On that note, how are we doing with Agenda 111 hospitals?
Interesting. I think the last I know is that 50 of the 111 sites have actually been handed over to contractors. And so they should be beginning. What we did was to immediately put about 600 million CDs straight in an escrow account at Bank of Ghana so that they can begin to get work once they go through the procedure. So most districts have been able to give land that makes sense for it, and 50 of these contractors have been handed over, you know, these properties for them to begin work on that. So I believe that.
So at least 50 have started.
50 should be starting. Yeah.
I see. Would we be able to get all the 111 starting?
I think that's a strategy of management, but certainly at least the initial 600 million has been escrowed for them. So that will be management's decision as to how to phase it to make sure that things go on as we ascribe. But I think it's all of those things that are also going to create jobs, because, you know, construction has a certain multiplier effect, which then means that all of these districts, you are going to find activity, and we are hoping that we'll also append housing to these places, so you get construction localized in all of our country. But what we also did was to divide the project into two, to say that, look, all of the construction should be done by indigenous people, and then we can talk about equipment as a different way, and that ensures the building of the capacity of indigenous Ghanaian entrepreneurship.
Let's look at what the young people are saying on social media. When we come back, we'll let the finance minister tell us about Japan number 2. What's happening with it? Are we now changing the money we want to raise from 500 to 1 billion? Some of the minority members say you should go for 10 billion because we have so much gold in the ground. Why is Ken Ofori-Atta going for small money? If he goes for small money, we won't pass it. He has to go for a lot of money. We'll come back to that. Let me start with you, Matilda. What are they saying?
Okay, so from Richard Ofori-Atta in OEB, he says, please ask if moving money from bank accounts to Momo numbers and vice versa attracts the tax.
Mr. Minister, does it attract the tax?
Well, moving money to yourself should not attract a tax.
So from my bank account,
moving money to somebody else, you know, is really a transfer of that.
Okay, so maybe let me let you explain and let's understand this. You're talking about the tax kicking in 100 cities and beyond. So that if I transact within 100 cities, I don't pay.
That's correct.
Okay, so if I send 150, I'm paying 1.75%
of 50.
1.25.
1.75.
1.75% of whatever
of 50.
money. Of 50.
Yeah. So you're talking about 100,
yes, so,
which is not.
Oh, so if I do 200, I'm not paying for the first 100.
That's correct.
I'm paying for the next 100.
That's correct.
Okay, so if I do 300 cities, calculate for me 300 cities 1.75, and then let me know. Do you have another message, Matilda?
Yes, also from Emmanuel Jesiado Jr., Westland. With the introduction of the e-levy on Momo and other e-transactions, is there no way the government can consider waiving tax payments through these e-payment platforms to GRA, since some Ghanaians may feel it will be unnecessary double payment of tax?
Yeah. I mean, I forgot, I missed your name?
Matilda.
Matilda. You know, I think nobody likes paying taxes. Okay, so I mean that's just you know. So any new tax that comes, you know, will have these questions that we have to address. You know, I have fuel tax. I could have done that. What is the multiplier effect on the economy, etc. I need to find a way, and then you have economies in transition, so that the old ways of taxing, it's just going to be different, okay? And the new handles are going to be these new handles. Are we going to miss it as a nation, as a state, where then everybody does not pay? And fortunately for this whole outcry of inclusiveness and everybody paying some, you know, allows, you know, a digital system for everyone to be part of the burden sharing to go forward. So it's an issue of efficiency, it's an issue of extending it, it's an issue of civic responsibility, and we have to show a way in which this applies to the intractable needs that we have as a nation. And one thing is unemployment, okay? And this is going to cure that and also look at our roads network to be able to do that. And so am I expecting a pushback? Of course I'm expecting a pushback on that. But it is good for where we want to go. I'm firmly convinced that is where we want to go.
Okay, you have one more?
They can go.
Okay. Abregu, what do you have?
Okay, so most of the questions burden on the clearance for the payment of teachers and nurses. So Mr. Abdul Jalil asks that Mr. Paul, please ask him when they are going to give financial clearance for the last batch of qualified trained teachers from the colleges of education. And then from Danso Eric, this is more of a comment, not a question. He says, Paul is always on top of his work. Brilliant question from Paul. But J. Ubiba gives a sort of different angle to this, and he says that only this government in its first term abolished about 17 different nuisance taxes and still reduced electricity by almost 30%. Only this government was able to provide free utilities, water and light for the poor for a long period of time. And then there's also questions about delayed recruitment of nurses. But then Kweku Kakari Menu gives a very interesting angle. He says that, I have a question for the Honorable Minister. Did they think of getting tools digitally? If they did, what were the disadvantages? And also, did they think of the impact of the e-levy on the interest of Ghanaians in the implementation of the ECD and other digital transactions? I also have certain personal questions, but maybe after.
I'll come to that. Christine, what do you have?
Okay, Joyce Ekofo is asking, please ask the minister when the government is going to roll over the clients of Gold Coast Fund Management onto the full bailout package. An allocation was made to pay us in the 2021 budget, but did not see anything and nothing was said about it in the 2022 budget. Can he give us some assurance? And Alfred Mensa Onuma says, hi Paul, for the write-up on the paper, it looks and sounds good regards to the budget. My fear is the lapses in the checks and balances when it comes to budget implementation. How different is this youth entrepreneurial policy from Maslow and the rest implemented over the years by different governments? What has been the rate of recovery for such initiatives in giving out such loans?
Okay, hold it there. Minister, maybe that's a question you should say. How different is it from Maslow?
Yeah.
What is the guarantee that it will work? And
I mean, very, very good questions, and thank you for that. And these, I've been around quite a bit, before coming to this in terms of Tamale and Sunyani and Accra, etc., talking to the youth. So when do you acknowledge mistakes and then move forward in a bold way?
So you want us to be optimistic about the future?
Or should we?
Let's not be frightened by what happened yesterday with Maslow and with all that. Okay. Should we be confident because we have a new manager on the wheel?
Well, I think, called Akufo-Addo government. And it's been a lot of learning over this period, in which really, if you look at where the economy was through before COVID, it will be disingenuous not to say that we have not made headway. Now, could we have done a bit more? Of course we can do a bit more. Have we now come out with something that we think we inoculate some of these things? I believe we have, and we should think about it that way. You talk about the rate of recovery, and when you talk about the rate of recovery, you are talking about our attitude as a people. So the question becomes, is it only the politicians who are protectors of the public purse? Or is it you as a citizen to be concerned about the public purse and guide us through that? So we say GRA is not working. GRA is full of our mothers and aunts and uncles and co. what is it that we confront them with as to why we are 12% revenue to GDP, you know? And it is that national conversation of honesty and truth that we really need to embark on. And I hope that we can escalate that and, you know, and stop putting our head in the sand as to who is really responsible. So you talk about Fix Ghana, and I say, yeah, there's a lot to do to fix this
They call it Fix the Country.
Yeah, well, Ghana, the Republic, for me. And I asked, you know, so when I go to the ministry, do I meet Ken Ofori-Atta or do I meet my aunt or uncle who sits at the front pew of the church? And who is it, you know? And so where should the conversation start? It's not about nihilism, you know, but really saying, hey, where are we going as a people and who is responsible while we putting our head in the sand? So yes, the recovery is an issue, but how can people brag about taking things from Maslow and not paying? You know, and what is our responsibility to do that and change that dialogue? You talk about Black Shield and Gold Coast. So there were some 88,000 claimants, I think, talking about close
88,000 individual claimants.
Individual claimants and companies, talking about 4 or 5 billion that was validated also. And then Gold Coast or Black Shield took us to court about liquidation. So we couldn't do anything about that. And then we decided that, you know, we can't be held hostage to this. So let us just look at all the people with at least 50,000 CDs and pay it irrespective of where the court proceedings are. And we went ahead, you know, to do that so that, you know, people will have some liquidity. But we are caught up in court because Black Shield and Gold Coast, you know, have put us in there. So we are hopefully waiting for the...
So how many of the 88,000 have you paid that 50,000 threshold?
I think about... we were able to pay maybe 50,000.
That's impressive.
Also, which were, you know, and that was our own decision, you know, to do that because we saw the hardship that was coming. So it's our own people, in a sense, and then it is framed as government, you know, without that empathy of understanding the situation. So we do hurt ourselves in a lot of ways because we don't confront. You know, but we need to, and for my excitement about coming of the Youth Start program is that you're going to get bolder youth, you know, who are being helped to do their business, and therefore beginning to question the older generation about certain habits that are not good, people learning to pay for what they borrow. So for example, the students' loans now, we took off a guarantor because now we can find you.
With the ID card?
With the ID card as to where you are, to create that sense of responsibility and payback and a new sense of what a citizen should do. You know, but these are all difficult transitions for people and a lot of historical reason to be cynical. But I think of digitalization, you're going to be responsible, you know, for your own actions. Things that are going to be a little bit more automatic. And you're going to see a new generation that has this dynamism and habits that enable us to turn our money around a lot better.
And Mikhail, we didn't come to you. Let's hear you.
Okay. Now, Alexander Lux Odoy wants to know. He says, good evening, Paul. Now that the road toll has been abolished, what happens to large trucks coming from neighboring countries who ply our roads and trade here in the country? Are they going to be watched and leave our borders without paying taxes? I'm in a dilemma.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, so you can use that to talk about the road toll. What's the rationale? What is 1 day old now? What is your own sense?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge really, I mean, as you look at it, is how much do we get from that?
From the road tolls?
From the road tolls. I think maybe about 78 million.
Per annum?
Per annum.
Oh, just that?
There are some 38 road tolls on public roads around the country. About 20 of them are private sector managed, you know, in terms of that. And then what do you have? you have issues of frustration, of traffic, of productivity, of pollution, and some degree of danger with the markets that have formed around them. So you make a determination that maybe for this period, public roads, should not have that. But certainly in future, as you now build roads of the private sector, those should be tolled. I mean, that's a different issue.
So we'll be restoring the road tolls at some point when the private sector
once we do PPPs and private sector, because those are the resources you need for that. But as we stand today, and the issues that I have enumerated, the question becomes, really, what is the opportunity cost of this? So that when I wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. drowsy in my trotro, I'm not going to be faced with another queue in a place that then creates pollution, etc. So we move forward. So those are some of the reasons for
so your point is 78 million. You're losing the 78 million, but what you're going to gain from the
from the alternative from the e-tax.
What is the expectation of the e-tax?
I think this year we put in close to 7 billion as resources that we can get from the e-tax, and so we should be able to do our youth program. We should be able to get our roads, a lot more efficiently in terms of delivery, and also have a sense of everybody being part of this rebuild.
You mean we should realize after the first year of the appropriation Act 7 billion?
About 7 billion.
Cities. Yeah. That's about $1 billion, a little more than that actually, from the road tolls.
Yeah. From the
E-levy, and that's going to go into just roads?
No. Well, we have the youth, as I mentioned. We have roads. We have real issues of security, and I think the issues of security are not one that we can sort of wish away. Since the crisis in Libya, you have seen extensive arms, coming through sort of Mali, Burkina, Niger, etc. Therefore, threatening our northern borders in such a way. And then piracy has also increased. And the issue of jihadist movements is one also of economic. You don't necessarily see a marauding army coming, but one or two people getting into a village and beginning to radicalize, etc. So the dividends of democracy must show a lot quicker than it is being shown, or as you lose, that strength. And it is these things that would ensure that we send development into these rural areas, so that the alternative of radicalization is reduced.
Let me come back to you, Mikhail. You have some more, I guess. What do you have?
Yes, please. Okay, Abdul Basit says that the economic transformation budget landed in Parliament yesterday with juicy policies that bring many reliefs to our businesses. We have free toll and youths will receive economic empowerment. Now, Vericabs Gadri says the World Bank says our GDP ratio is 81%. So what is the finance?
You mean debt to GDP ratio?
Yes, please.
The World Bank says 81%.
Yes, please.
Finance Minister says 77.8.
Right. So who do you choose to believe? Let's begin to believe in ourselves, and really work our way through this, because I think we can. I'm deeply committed for us to turn this curve, and we can do it ourselves, and that's where we are. I think the youth is key to the future, and we have to support local industry, leverage of the AFCFTA, and for Ghana to become a regional hub, just a destination to go to. Because ICT is working, there's a certain dynamism, there's a destination. This is Ghana to be the ideal for people. But the youth must really have that sense of dynamism. And I think this is what we are trying to bring with enablers of training and of capital and of IT.
Somebody sends a text and says that, ask him that General Kutua Champon used to say that give the commanding heights of the economy into the hands of Ghanaians themselves. Is that also his philosophy? Because he's hobnobbing with the World Bank one time too many.
Okay. Yeah, I mean...
Commanding heights of the economy to Ghanaian hands. Yeah. Are we creating Ghanaian business? Have we been doing that since 2017?
Yeah. What have we been doing? We certainly have been building human capital. We certainly have been making sure that, you know, people sort of poo-poo the macro indicators, but those are what then enables private sector to grow. As your interest rates come down, as there's a certain stability in your foreign exchange so that you can plan, you know, those are all, you know, preconditions to setting the groundwork for that, and how to build a confident people who are educated and have the training to do that.
What about the deliberate effort by government to create Ghanaian giants?
Yeah, for example, you know, we've been doing the SHEP program of trying to get electricity everywhere. And you go through the books and there's a whole bunch of foreign companies that are doing that. Now you atomize the deal and you say, this is a bunch of what? Street poles, some transformer, some wires hired, you know, strung to a village. Why is this being done by a foreigner? You know, so we started using Ghanaians to do that. And it is that type of signaling that leads to, I mean, this whole concept of local content. You know, I look at it and say, why should there be local content? There should be foreign content. It should be me, the Ghanaian, you know, doing it and deciding that maybe some foreigner may help me with something. But
I get your point. So the legislation ought to be not about local content. Like, you see that as an anathema. The legislation should be about how much foreign content you can have.
I don't see it, because what if I can build an investment bank? You mean somebody can build, you know, whatever? It just flies against my sense of this perception.
Are you happy with the CD?
Am I happy with it? The CD?
It's now gone beyond 6.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I think we were holding our own, and then you know, the past 4 weeks or so, we had these huge spreads in the bond market, you know, for us, and this whole skepticism about whether we will default as a country, etc. You know, so in this budget, you can see the level of contraction of 12.1% of GDP deficit to 7.4, and then also moving our primary balance to a positive, which was expected in 3 years or so. You know, so the issue of austerity, you know, is clearly being done, and that should really put pay to this concept that we are not going to be able to manage ourselves properly. And then with the resources from the E-Levy, we should be able to move ourselves through that. And that could bring the confidence that we need. But Paul, even that is not enough. I mean, we are the largest gold producing country in Africa. There are like 2 or 3 refineries that are LBMA certified, okay, Zimbabwe and South Africa. There's some group called LBMA in England or Switzerland that determines whether you can refine gold or not. How can I be the largest producer in Africa and somebody is telling me it will take me 3 years to be able to
build a refinery? Or to be licensed to refine. We need to be licensed to refine our own gold.
Yeah.
So if I take gold from Konongo, somebody must tell me whether I can.
Exactly. And I'm the largest.
That's not fair, is it?
Yeah. So it is those fundamental issues that you fight with, okay? Because assuming even we refine, let's say, 10% of our gold ourselves here, that's an extra $55 million that we make, okay? Africa has maybe about 840 tons of gold, and everybody sends this in outside to be refined. You know, what is it if you have a refinery here which brings all of this 844, 2 million tons through that? And those are the fundamental fights that you need to do, and therefore understanding of the World Bank or the IMF or those institutions, and so that you know where to intervene.
Is that why the CD, is it part of the reason why the CD may be struggling?
Well, so what I'm saying is that once you begin to do that, the Bank of Ghana now has a new policy of trying to acquire, trying to build up its gold reserves, okay? So you begin to build your gold reserves in a methodical way, and your country's currency is back, and this whole issue of a currency, you know, going up and down is a thing of the past. But that's the type of thinking that we should have as a nation. There's no reason why our commodities to support them, and given the knowledge we have as a people, you know, we don't situate, you know, the basis of creating that wealth in our country. So those are all some of the things that...
Somebody sends a text that says that Kenneth Ofori-Atta is rattling beautifully. Please ask him that given all the problems he's highlighting about gold, was it fair to criticize John Mahama and Seth Terkper for losing the CD as they did?
I mean, I kind of don't like to get into that type of debate. What do we do to go forward? Okay? I mean, and what do we do as an educated elite in terms of our responsibility to the state? How can we have Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana being 60–70% of cocoa production in the world, and we don't control the price because we are not thinking hard enough, or what is it? And those are fundamental questions that we ask. You know, should we be going forward? We should be going forward. You know, politics, that's a different issue. But in terms of thinking through the management and how best to leverage our resources, I think that's what we are here to do.
Absolutely. Japan will be our last topic. Shall we take a commercial break now and grab some water? Okay. 2 minutes break. We'll be back with Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta. 10 minutes to the top of the hour, 11. We are privileged that the finance minister has agreed to be with us until this late. Some of your people are sending us text. They are very excited. Mr. Ampofo of Enterprise Insurance says that he's very excited about the interview. And your managing director at MAIF, Nanaya Okrantin, also sends a text and says that he can't wait for the Ejapa part. He's waiting for it. He should be answering that question, really. He's the managing director. Mikhail, what question do you have for the Honorable Minister?
Ask, we already know that the Ghana card is being touted as a way of now tracing the people who before were not being traced with the tax identification number. So we can now find the people and then know how much they're spending to be able to tax them. So now that we have this platform that is coming into operation, is it necessary to add the e-levy, especially because it might make mobile money very unattractive and it possibly hurts that mobile money sector?
Yeah, that mobile money being an attractive question, I think. Honorable Minister, what do you have to say?
I don't know. You know, we have waited patiently to come to this level. I think in 2016, we had about 78 billion CDs of transactions going through the system. Today, we have close to 500 billion, and I suspect we'll get to 1 trillion, you know, in short order. So clearly, we as a society have begun to recognize the convenience of this and an ability, therefore, literally to shift the banking system in a way that has come there. So what, you know, as I begin to think about tax handles in the future, some tax handles naturally will drop because nobody is using them for you to tax. This is really the transition, and that's what we are doing to make sure that in this time we are all kind of part of it in contributing into this inclusiveness and burden sharing that will be necessary for the transformation ahead.
Apeku, what question do you have?
Okay, so moving forward, don't you think governments, the central government, should spend less for the purpose of sustained economic development? So free SHS should be narrowed to those who actually need it. Infrastructural developments should be left to district assemblies, and central government should only spend when needed. And also looking at the entrepreneurship project or program, is there a need for us to actually look at the education the young people receive? Because there is a stark contrast between the education we receive in school and this. Most people are trained to be employees and not employers. So we should try and, don't you think there is a need to look at the education also?
Great.
He's asking for you to stop spending on free SHS in the way that we do.
Yeah, you know, free SHS is interesting because what is the philosophy? The philosophy is that you want Ghanaians to be educated. Every citizen has his right. I happen to be born by Kweku or whatever. But if Kweku decides to be irresponsible, should that affect that baby citizen?
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
But if,
it shouldn't.
If Kweku is responsible, and
but I can't put, you know, I can barely put Kweku in prison, you know, for deciding
not to look after the child.
Not to look after to a certain degree, unless there's abuse, etc., etc. And I can't afford that as a nation, as I begin to build up my people. So yes, there'll be some inefficiencies. Will there be moral suasion? Will also there be a point in time where I can truly calculate your income to be able to effect that? And I think maybe we are getting to that level. But let's never forget that it is about that citizen, not about that citizen's parent or aunt or whatever.
So are we envisaging a period where all ID cards and everybody's known, everybody's income is known, where we'll have a situation where people will be identified as needing free SHS and others will be identified as not needing it?
You have a clarity on people's income. Okay, and so you qualify, I think in the States, you qualify for scholarships if you have a certain level of income in certain places. So there'll be a system to validate, okay, and then you can get more sophisticated with that. But truly, let's just not keep, you know, our eye off the ball that it's about that citizen who has a right to be educated, irrespective of the lineage or whatever it comes from. There's a moral shame for me to go and drop my child in Wesley Girls and walk away not paying anything with my income. But hey, you know. But I suspect that it will grow, with time when we can validate, and then we'll take a different view about that. I think you raise an interesting issue about central government and also about the educational system that we have, as to bringing in entrepreneurship as a course that you have to take, or business, you even know how to write an invoice, that whole sense of thriftness that we have to do. So yes, we'll do that. Empowering the districts so that the technical capacity is there. And I think that's our challenge going forward, because then you can decentralize a lot more, because with these property taxes, there's a whole new wave of resources that are going to go to the district. And the question is whether the management systems in there have the capacity to use that so that you can absorb these JHS students, to do the sanitation, etc., and create these jobs in the local environment and to do that.
Interesting. Matilda?
All right, so my question is about how we can be guaranteed that this YouStart initiative is not going to become a connection-based initiative.
Yeah.
I'd like to just simply add one more, which is on behalf of all trained teachers. They want to find out about the financial clearance for the recruitment of trained teachers of 2020. They said their financial clearance has not been given till now, and they would really love you to comment on that.
Great, yeah.
So, how is it going to be? Whom YouStart?
Yeah, I think that's a problem that in going around the country was an issue that came up really strongly. But there's a whole computerization system that is going to be set up, the distribution of the outlets between NEA, NEIP, and the major banks are going to be national. And the beauty of digitalization is that, it goes beyond the personal. So I don't need to be part of a party for me to put my application in there and for it to be assessed, or for you to come for the training, which will be as wholesale as possible. And then you move on to the next categorization of that. So we'll continue to tighten it, but I think it's going to be such a national program that truly, this issue should diminish, with time. Yeah. And then the financial clearance, I'm working on a lot of financial clearances, so I will get to that too. Yeah.
Okay, let's come back to Ejapa,
yes.
Our final bit of questions.
Okay.
Ejapa is going back to Parliament, or at least the idea is coming back. People say that it's such a great and wonderful idea. They wonder why you're looking for just 500 million. They think you should be looking for 10, 20 billion.
Yeah. I mean, I when I go to Parliament to go for bond transactions, I do ask for a certain figure, and then also ask for the wherewithal to go beyond that. I mean, the whole issue of listing companies on stock markets is that the pricing is cut, at almost the last minute, in which you then determine what the market will take. So is it 500 million we'll get? Is it 1 billion we'll get? Is it 2 billion? And it's pretty transparent, You can't go and then come back with 500 million without the world knowing what has occurred. So this whole interpretation that is the most amount of money you are going to get, etc., flies in the face of what typically happens in the market with regards to IPOs, and when people send in their bids, and then you determine the price that will occur given the comparables that are there. And we've not done any transaction which seems to suggest that we always undercut government before. So I'm not sure about this degree of cynicism.
So you are telling people that we could go and get 2 billion, depending on how the market reacts.
Yeah, and whether we want to retain a certain amount of percentage, etc. All that will be dictated by that. I mean, we've lost some steam with regard to gold prices going down, but it's an interesting period also with where oil is, and seeing that it might be the first such, introduction to the market. And when you look at the whole idea of also diversifying from needing to always take debt into using your resources for equity, I think it should be encouraged. I mean, maybe we should have done more stakeholder consultations, which we have gone around to do a lot more, so that people get the spirit of where we are going, and then we do that. Because we can do many more things than what we are using.
Do you have a timetable in your mind when you roll out this again?
I think I would like to come to Parliament as soon as the AG is ready. And then, we proceed with the new management of MIF as to how to go forward on that. And I think the new board, has that capacity that we can work with.
I see. Let's be closing. LGBT bill is in Parliament. People are divided. Society is divided. There's a group of 18 eminent scholars led by Akoto Ampao who are against the bill. Speaker Bagbin is for the bill. You can name MPs are for the bill, is against the bill. It's becoming almost like a theory that's dividing the nation. You've lived in America for long and you understand the world. What's your take on LGBT bill before Parliament?
I mean, very complex issue. And really, for me, it's quite kind of biblical in a sense, which says that God created us in his own image. Now, whether it's man or woman is a different issue. So in each person is God's image. I can't begin, therefore, to make judgments on the person. I may not like what I may determine to be a sin, but as long as God's image is in that person, and I know that thief or whoever was even forgiven in the last minute.
On the cross.
On the cross, okay. So for me, I guess I find it difficult on the issues of criminalization when I know that all of us are born in the image of God. My challenge is to what? Evangelize what I believe is the way that God wants you to be. But that's a challenge for me, not to criminalize.
But if our society doesn't like it, how else do we abhor it?
Okay, but you have made a categorical statement that our society does not like it.
Assuming our society doesn't like it.
Work on assumptions when somebody is going to make a law, and where does it state? I mean, we all have been to secondary schools, we've been to boarding schools, we know what happens, in markets, so this whole escalation, for me, it's interesting as to, is this the nature that Ghanaians deal with problems of this nature? I don't think so. I think there's a way that Ghanaians deal with these things, and I pause when I remember that everyone has God's images, and it's my challenge to bring them to the levels that I put. So I don't see, and I think, was it Bishop Tutu, that he says that he'll fight this whole criminalization of gays with the same energy that he used to fight apartheid, because you are creating a certain sense of a human being that is not, who has God's image in him. And that's just my view. And I also don't know what people do in their bedrooms, so to pretend that because I'm holding a man's hand in the street, I can be thrown in prison. And when we go to prison, where do they put me? In the women's or the men's cell? I don't know.
So your view is Parliament should do what?
I haven't even read the bill. The bill that they are trying to, but it just strikes me that the discussions are going along the wrong way. But that's how I feel deeply about the question of love.
That's how, the other matter connected to this is the National Cathedral. Government has been lambasted for ignoring the problems of Ghanaians and setting out a prime land in Northridge, pulling actually down bungalows of state officials, including justices of the Superior Court of Judicature, and erecting, as they call it, an unnecessary National Cathedral. I know that you have been a principal supporter of the National Cathedral project. What's your view about this criticism?
You know, it's, you know, I listen to it and I have my views about, you know, you look at this country and the peace and safety and security, lack of war, etc., survival through the system. And I guess for faith-based oriented people, we cannot but acknowledge the will of God in this and what He has done to bring us this far. So to take out, Paul, what is this area of Ghana? 450 something thousand square hectares or something?
10 acres for the cathedral.
Take out 10 acres of the cathedral for 60 years of independence and how far God has brought us, to be lambasted on that. I just find that so incredible that it is a point of such supposed division. I just, you know, I'm at my wits' end.
Well, they think 100 million, we're spending $100 million on it. It could build hospitals, it could build schools, and we have churches. We thank God all the time anyway. We have a national Thanksgiving service and occasion.
Are we spending $100 million on it? I mean, is it going to cost that? Yes. Is government going to pay for all of that? No. But truly, so that's my view. I mean, I feel there are three pillars for building a nation: the politics of it, the economics of it, and the spirituality of it. And that triangle must be complete for us to be a blessed nation. And I'll take that risk any day.
I see. NPP break the 8. You know, there's a joke from the opposition that say that they are wondering whether between the CD and the petrol prices, which one will first break the 8? The CD is now at 6.1. Petrol prices, they say, is at 6 as well. They are wondering which will break the 8, because break the 8 has been coined by NPP communicators about urging the country to vote for a third time for the new patriotic party come 2024. NPP seems to have not yet chosen a candidate. I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate. We haven't heard your name yet, Honorable Ofori-Atta, for the leadership of the party. How is the feeling among those of you at the top echelons of the party about this break the 8, and which candidate?
Paul, I'm a very technical person from a very political family. And that's what it is. I mean, 3 of my relatives are part of the founders. So the DNA is there. And I love Ghana because of these things, you know, a CD to break the 8, petrol to break the 8. Let's have some fun in where it's going. I think those who want to be president have already kind of shown their hand. And I guess the calendar looks to maybe, 2023 for the selection of that. So I think that will go on. And we should have a strong candidate. But I'm deeply convinced that the people of Ghana will vote for the NPP to continue.
Irrespective of which candidate?
I think so, because really, as I look at the policies that we are going to effect and truly the success of them, which we are going to make sure as a government that happens. You know, you go to a place like Singapore and you ask, so why is it that this party keeps coming? And he says, you know, if people have their homes, the economy is stable, they have jobs. They may be sympathetic to the other party, but when they get into that room, they're thinking of their mortgage, they're thinking of their children going to school, they're thinking of their jobs, and then they'll vote. You know, and I'm committed to being part of this party to deliver this to the people of Ghana.
They bring the aid. Yeah. When you guys meet in cabinet, is there sort of feeling that Haji Bawumia as vice president, Alan Martin, these are the people breaking the aid? Is that kind of feeling like that? Already, Ofori-Atta, Minister of Agri?
Yeah, but the issue about politics is, you know, I mean, if you're a politician, I guess the highest post you want is to be president. You know, so it's their right to fight for that, you know. And for us who are committed to not getting into being voted for in these things, and we are technical people, you know, who look at this, but a complete empathy as to where we stand in this political evolution. It's good to know that people are competing.
Many years ago, you told the world that you resigned your job as MD of Data Bank to support Nana Akufo-Addo to become president because of his vision that you shared. Nana Akufo-Addo is ruled as his presidency. Are you back in the same position you were in, say, about 2006, where you are looking at yourself as finance minister and you have identified a certain vision of a new politician that you want to support again within the MPP?
No, I haven't really gotten to that, except to say that really the Republic must be standing extremely firm going forward. And that's where I'm going to deploy my energies on the two strands that we are embarking on, the economic emancipation and the spiritual strength of the country.
But if this Akufo-Addo government, final question, if this Akufo-Addo government were to succeed, and I sincerely hope it does, you would, Ken Ofori-Atta, would be at the pinnacle of that success. Is it not odd, therefore, that you don't want to take up the leadership position of the party into the 2025? Because you talked about the spiritual and also the economic emancipation. If we are to achieve economic emancipation, the name that will resonate among our people is Ken Ofori-Atta. Why are you not thinking of moving that forward into the presidency?
That's, Paul, it's because, you know, sometimes people believe that it's their energies and their intellect that brought them in. But I just firmly believe that the Lord leads you and gives you the energy to do a specific job. And when you begin to mission creep is when you're shipwrecked. Okay, and I haven't really. I think He's used me technically since I became aware of my spirituality, and so I'm not, you know, sort of looking out for anything else but what I believe He has purposed me to do, which is to be technical, to use my brain to support that. And there are many ways. If you look at, let's say, the EU. It was Jean Monnet, you know, who was a civil servant, you know, who thought through the combination of Franco-German relationships and figured out how to bring them together to now create this. He never wanted to be president, you know, and I think we should all understand sometimes what our God-given attributes are and not stretch it beyond what He has not mandated us to do.
Okay, that's our final question. I'll end the interview, but I won't end without showing you viewers Ken Ofori-Atta's sermon in Parliament yesterday as he concluded the budget review. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. It's been such a delight talking to you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. The young people, a round of applause maybe for the Honourable Minister of Finance. Okay, so we will end on rolling out, reminding you of the sermon in Parliament. This is Ken Ofori-Atta.
Mr. Speaker, we promised to reduce the suffering of Ghanaians when we came into office, and we did just that when we came into office. Specifically, let me tell you what the government of His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo has done. We reduced electricity tax cumulatively by 10.9% compared to a cumulative increase of 264% under the NDC. We provided free water for households for April, May, and June of 2020. We doubled the capitation grant from 4.5 to 10 cedis. We established the Nation Builders Corps of 100,000 graduates to build the job skills of our graduates to be absorbed into the workforce. We created jobs and stopped the freeze on recruitment in the public sector. Over 295,000 people were recruited. We abolished fees for postgraduate medical training in Ghana. We increased the share of DSGF to persons with disabilities by 50%. We exempted carrier from market tolls. We ensured the implementation of our pledge of employing 50% of the persons who manage the country's toll booths